How you going, everyone? Bit of a different video today. As you may or may not know, I only did start doing Warhammer and all that sort of junk around about a month and a half ago in March or so. So I feel like I've been slowly getting a bit better, and I've just been posting, my videos on making them all. If anyone is interested for like designs or tutorials on how I do my stuff, but as I've slowly been progressing, hopefully getting better anyway. But tell me what you guys think. My local Games Workshop store is doing a bit of a painting competition, so I thought maybe trying one of those out and see how it is. So I'll be doing the Invictus Tactical Warsuit today with more of a experimental design, which you guys will see later. But anyway, enough of me going on. Let's crack into it. Bit of a jump cut, but I've started building the kit. It's pretty much just a standard kit. However, I was going to put the Citadel Skulls box in, and I must say I was honestly expecting I was going to have to chop the skull down, but it fits absolutely perfectly in there into the cockpit section. I've only had to chop away a couple of the bars to fit the little pointed, and I've pretty much just grabbed a bunch of tubes and stuff from the bits box and just jammed it in all the eye holes, kind of like a large servo skull. Over to the legs now. Normally I like having a bit of a custom poses when it comes to the dreadnoughts, as them just standing around is a bit boring. So for posing legs, I have to start on the base first. So first off, I just grab the base, and I've got some craft cork that I picked up from just like a standard craft store. This is like 2mm cork board, which you can just rip apart, and I've just glued the base on, ripped out just past it so it seems more like a dynamic section, and then just slowly built up the layers of rock that I want him to be standing on so that I can pose the legs later on down the line. Now for the legs, so how they normally work is they are more ball jointed to an aspect, and they have normally a slot and a peg just for the standard mono pose feature. However, on most of my dreadnoughts, I chop all those off, the ones in the waist, the pelvis area, and the ones in the knees, so they can bend forward just a little bit more. And then as you can see, I'm just glue tacking or blue tacking, whatever you want to call it, just sort of like guessing out how I want to glue everything together. Normally I just do this before starting cementing or anything like that, in case I do screw anything up. Now the plan originally has changed in the future, but you'll see that down in the video, is to magnetize the chainsaw I picked up from Taro Model Maker. I'll leave a link down below for if you guys want to try anything like that or buy anything else from his store. But I'm going to magnetize the chainsaw to his hand, just in case of any future droppage or anything like that, so it's much easier than having like the whole hand snap off or something along those lines. Now, finishing off right before priming, I've just added a bit more detail to the base, like a weathered away Space Marine and just a couple of extra little sections, and I've also added bullet marks and just little like scrapes and grazes along the shouldered areas and most areas where he would be shot at for extended periods of time. Now I've just gone ahead and primed 80% of the model in Vallejo black primer. Unfortunately I did run out, as it's only like it's a pretty small amount of cans, so I've just had to finish off the arms with some Rust-Oleum grey, which both paints are quite good. I do suggest in the future, if you're using a light color, use a lighter grey or something like the Rust-Oleum, which I'm using, and then for darker metal colors just use the black, so you can just dry brush it on much easier. At the moment, I'm just posing the model as to how I want it in the future, and then I'm just going to super glue the open hand as I want it in a up motion instead of just being loose like the flamethrower, as I want him to be kind of like Thor, as he has his hand raised to the sky and lightning or plasma is crackling from his hand. Now for the crackling lightning parts, I originally bought 1mm thick wire, however that ended up being too big for the scale size model. I'll probably use it in the future, but instead I've used some metal wire that you normally get from packaging that's like used to contain like a charging cable, that normal bendy wire that has the plastic over it. I've just stripped off all the plastic and just used a metal wire to super glue into sections. Next up, I went over with some hot glue to thicken the connector point, just to make it more realistic looking, as a lot of times lightning ends up being a lot thicker in the parts where it interjects and touches each other, just to give off a more realistic effect instead of just having like strandly little bits hanging all over the joint. Now onto the painting, I've just started off by stippling on some Citadel Corvus Black onto the main panels, and that's the main color scheme for my army. Then for a highlight, I started slowly mixing in Dawnstone and Gracier into the Corvus to get a more of a lighter bluish, not like a super like light grey, but more of a darker bluey sort of color, as the Corvus Black isn't completely black, it's more of like a incredibly dark navy blue to an extent. And I've just slowly layered that on further and further away from the edges, closer towards the center where the light would come down. Next up, I did a 50-50 mix of Vallejo Medium, Express Medium, and Vallejo Express Black Lotus. It is similar to Contrast Black Templar, which you guys could use. However, what I've heard is that it's a bit better than the Contrast paint. It has a bit more better spread and just overall much better, nice, smooth texture to it. Next up, just repeating the process, stippling on a bit of Wraithbone onto the secondary panels, which I normally put on the legs and arms of dreadnoughts and vehicles. Over to the servo skull now. I just started off by stippling on some Mournfang Brown onto the main thing, and then normally when you do stippling, it gives a little bit of texture, so it'd be more realistic for bone. Then I would slowly mix in some Mournfang Brown as well as Zandari Dust, and then eventually, after becoming more of a Zandari highlight just by dry brushing less and less on top, I'd then mix to a Wraithbone Zandari, and then just originally Wraithbone for the final thing, giving the overall skull quite a lot of depth and quite a lot of layers, so you don't really have to blend the paints together as well compared to like using one or two paints. Over to the base now. I just started off by base coating everything in a Mournfang Brown, and then I just put texture paste over all the cork with the Agrillin Badlands, and then I just put that under the hairdryer to dry out much more quickly. After that had fully dried, I just started highlighting everything with a Zandari Dust over top again, since it's more similar to the terrain paste. And then once again, like the Wraithbone Zandari mix, closer and closer to eventually it's pure Wraithbone right on the tips of the rocks. And for the Dead Space Marine, I just went over with a sponge and sponge chipped on just a bit of blue to seem like a majority of the paint has been chipped off, and just to, instead of it just being grey, break up a little bit of the colour in the solid browns and light creamy colours that most bases do come with. Back over to the war suit now. For what I normally do, for if I do base everything black, I'll go over all the areas I want with bright colors, whether it be wires or lights, with a Corax white. So as you can see, a lot of the tubes, wires and lights that are all over the chassis have been hit with a Corax white. Next up, starting off with the weathering, I just did white scar over the paler sort of white thing so you can really see the chipping of the paint underneath. And I just grabbed a pair of tweezers and just some of these little sponge brushes. I'm not too sure, or maybe I got it right, but I'll just put the word or whatever it's called on the screen. And then I just clenched that with a pair of tweezers, and I just use a bit of masking or modeling tape just to hold it together so it don't end up, spraining my hands or anything by squeezing down for several minutes, like 10 minutes or so at a time. Next up, with the same method, even less, I did some Mournfang Brown just on the edges as a bit of rust from constant wear and tear of paint chipping away, ending up on bare metal, and then that bare metal rusting in the wars and all that sort of stuff. Then I just grabbed some bright silver. It's the special type of silver, so it's got a lot more metallics and a bit easier to see, and I just edge highlighted, not fully edge highlighting, but more of a inconsistent edge highlight across all the rusty areas. And for the blue sections, I just repeated the exact same process, but instead of using the white, I just made it a bit of a lighter sort of Corvus black, just so it's a bit more easy to see the chipping. Now back to the Corax white, I just went over with a couple of bright colors to simulate lighting and all sorts of different wiring and tubing that would be used on machinery, just to break up the dark blues and blacks and the dry brush silver that's on most of my army, or most of the warsuit, Now I've done a bit of a jump cut, but I've just added copper and a bit of silver over all these other sections. I just started off with Screaming Bell and then just added higher and higher sort of highlight colors to the edges. I'll have a list from the darkest colors to the brightest on the screen, and then I just used the technical oxide from Citadel just in all the areas where water would build up over time and weather away all the copper. I did also do a bit of streaking marks on the little tube itself to look like it's been leaking, as if it's been heavily unmaintained for quite a while. Over to the flamer section now. I've just hit it with a lead belcher, and then I've gone over with a couple of contrast paints, starting from a orange to purple and then a blue. I have everything listed on the screen, and then I've just slowly mixed them in, so more of a burning effect for like prolonged use that hasn't been cleaned in a while. And now a bit later, as you can see, I've just gone ahead and add a bit more oxide and all that sort of stuff. And I've also gone and painted his firearm. I've just done a standard sort of paint job just to try and break up the legs again. And I've just put some more of the copper oxides if it's been sitting there for a while and hasn't been used. And that water's been building up in all the like slots and everything, and just overall just leaking all over the joint. Now over to the arm, and honestly, I was really, I don't know how to explain it, quite scared to touch this, as I didn't want to mess this up, as I want to try and do this for a competition, and I didn't want to go out and buy another war suit. So I started off by just sucking it up and hitting everything over with a Corax white. And for the first bright color, I did a Bathroth blue and a white scar mix, 25% white scar and then 75% Bathroth blue for a nice brighter sort of color that would get in between all the cracks to be the brightest area. Then I went and stippled on just some standard just some straight Bathroth blue that everything has been watered down around the whole fist, besides where the lightning is striking, so it gives off a more of a sort of like bright area effect. Then I did a 50-50 of Bathroth and RMM blue. It's more just a whole lot of stippling again, but keeping it further and further away from the lightning. More of as, the brighter area, and then the further away from the lightning is more of a darker area. Then more stippling once again with just straight RMN blue, further and further away once again, as you can see on the picture. Then I did a 50-50 of RMN blue and Thousand Suns blue, which is a base color now, so it's getting darker and darker, and of course doing that further and further away from the lightning strikes. Then I did straight Thousand Suns blue, once again just on the corners and areas where it really shouldn't be, away from the lightning. And then after that, although I'm not sure if I have it fully recorded, I got Corvus Black, which was the base color, and I very, very slowly started to add the Corvus Black to the Thousand Suns blue, just right on the tips of the edges. And then for the very, very final edge highlight, I just went over really gently with a straight Corvus Black on the edge of the fingertips and all that, just to simulate that's the furthest away section from the sort of plasma lightning effect. And overall, I think after stressing for 8, because I honestly had this procrastinating for 2 or 3 days, so this video might come out a bit late, like a day or two late. I don't know, it just depends how long it takes me to do this video. But honestly, I was procrastinating it. But overall, after a while, I think it honestly looks quite good. I did ask for a couple people's opinion. They said it looks pretty good for, how I'm doing. And hopefully I do get better in the future. Maybe I'll use my airbrush, since my airbrush at the moment has shit the bed. So that's why everything's all stippled on. However, I believe stippled is, airbrush is a bit of a crutch in my opinion. However, stippling, much better need to learn that sort of stuff. Anyway. Now, for the lightning part of the arm, it looks a little bit odd, not just being the arm itself, so I've decided to once again try a bit of OSL, but instead of just using a paintbrush and trying on flat surfaces, I've just quickly done a dry brush of the Armenian blue again over the shoulder pad, down the arm, and then on the cage bit, and then a bit on the skull, and then I just finished off by just doing the highlights of the main section of the panels with a Bathroth blue again. You can barely see it, but in person it looks a bit better. Now with that all out of the way, honestly, I feel like I did a pretty solid job. Let me guys know what you guys think, and if you're interested in maybe getting a tutorial for how to do more lightning. I am considering making an own lightning piece, as the hand is already magnetized, just making another magnet piece and using that 1mm wire to have a large lightning bolt coming out of his hands heading straight up, just as a nice showpiece to finish off with. However, like I said, let me guys know what you think, and honestly, I think I did a pretty alright job going for it, especially with the OSL right at the end. And overall, in picture, it looks a bit brighter, but overall, in person, I think overall, lots of overalls there. But anyway, I'm going off script now. But honestly, I think I did a pretty good job. Let me know what you guys think, or give me some suggestions for what you think I should give a go at painting, and I'll have a look. Anyway, that's all I got. Catch you around.